I'm just fine-tuning the fit of this. It's still a little bit out. I've got a good fit around the bottom and up around the corner here. I'm now trying to get it to fit across here. Now I'll put this into the hole where it actually is fitting, and I've scored across the top here where the marker is, and there's a very fine scribe mark there which I'm working towards. Now the tools I'm using, just for interest, the cutting disc. Now I actually use cutting discs as fine grinders, so I'm able to get it up underneath and very gently on a low speed, because this is an air grinder, just a low speed, just to go along here and skim the edge. So I'm not actually cutting it, I'm using the side of the blade on very low speed to just trim a little bit off. Now I've got it down to probably a little bit less than a millimetre, and then I'm using a combination of files. This file, I've been using the round one gently on the ends. I've got a slightly very fine curved file, and I've got a whole packet of finer files. So just gradually fitting it up. Now to see whether I've got a fit, I use this light. I sit it under the panel. It's a handy, having a table that doesn't have a bottom in it. And then I put this on the top, and then I can see the light coming through under the panel where it's touching, where the light shows it's not touching. So there are areas I've got to grind off a little bit more, or file off, not grind off. I'm only using a file at this stage. So I'm not filing this. This has got a nice smooth shape. This is a little bit irregular, and that's why I'm filing these edges off. Slow process. It's you only get one go at it. If you file too much off, you've got a gap. But anyway, I've still got a little bit of movement to do. You can see a little bit of light coming up through the centre here, so I've just got to gently file this, not too far. That will drop this and get that closer. So it's just a very slow process now. Anyway, I'll keep on it. Alright, I've fitted the repair section in. It's that's just held in by the fit. There's a couple of places it's sitting up. I just need to push those down to weld. But apart from that, it's a pretty good fit. Now I'll probably hold that in with while I'm welding, with a combination of clamps and probably where are they? These magnets. I mean, it'll hold itself, but I just don't want it to move. As I start to put some tacks in this, it may move when you put a little bit of heat in the panel. So the next job is to clean everything up around here. Make sure I've got a very clean surface to weld, and then I'll tack it in position. Just put some initial tacks so it's basically held. When I'm doing that, I'll probably have to look at the issue of shrinkage as the welding progresses. So I'll keep addressing that with a hammer and dolly. I really don't want distortion if I can avoid it. I mean, I'll get some distortion, but I'm hoping to correct that as I go. So next step, clean everything up inside and outside. I may decide to tack on the inside just to hold it in position, and then progress to the outside to do the actual weld. So anyway, there's a lot more to do, but at least at this stage it's in place. It's a very big piece. It's a longer piece than I've done already on this panel, but hopefully that will work. I've managed to tack this repair section in place. I've still got more tacks to put in before I start welding it. I want to make sure that the tacks are quite close together. The process of doing this is, for me, it's slow because I'm not an experienced TIG welder. So I've spent a lot of time making sure everything aligns, and then in between welds just making adjustments with a hammer and dolly. That seemed to have worked quite well. Had 2 blow-throughs, one there and one on the end there, so I'm quite happy with that. You know, I could have expected a lot more than that, but that's been quite good. I can fix those. I'll either do that with TIG and a copper plate behind, or maybe even MIG with a copper plate behind. I'll wait and see. Probably tend to think I use TIG. It's very little distortion that I can feel. A bit hard with the little tacks in place to feel what the shape is. The shape seems pretty close, but obviously once I've completely welded this, I will have to use hammer and dolly, because I'm sure there'll be certainly some distortion there that I need to tap out. So at this stage I'm quite pleased with the way it's turned out. The thing I'm looking for is whether I had thought I might lead wipe this area, but the more I read about lead wiping, you actually need a certain thickness of lead to make it work properly. What I'm working on is trying to get these panels as straight as possible, so there's not a lot of depth in anything here, so I may not consider leading. Maybe, seeing I'm spending the time to get the panels as straight as possible, just a very thin skim of filler might be sufficient. It's not close to the edges, so it's not as if anything's going to be chipped off. Anything close to the edges I will use lead, but in here I'm tending to think if I can keep the panels straight and there's very little imperfection in it, I'll probably use a modern filler. Anyway, that's a long way off. So what I'll do now, I've just been through and made sure these where I haven't tacked, that the panels are aligned, and now I'll just go through and put intermediate tacks. When I've finished that, I'll go around with hammer and dolly again, make sure everything's straight, and then I'll start with the continuous, well, not a continuous weld. If I was experienced enough, I'd probably go around the whole lot. I won't. I'll do sections probably about that long, and then I'll let it cool, and then I'll go through with the hammer and dolly and straighten things as I go. So I'm not confident to do the whole lot, but it's going better than I thought. I've just been doing a general straightening of this. It's not too bad. still a few highs and lows. I'm not worried about that because what I really now need to do is that this was a large patch. I probably should have made it much longer, but I was a bit concerned about how that would weld in. But what I now need to do is to cut further sections of this panel out along here. Now, the repairs that I did on the other side came up to around about here, and there's a gap in here where the metal is thin, and what's happened when this is welded in, this is actually then on the thin metal, it's bulged up. I mean, I knew I had to do something with this, but I think the only way to repair it is to actually cut it out. So it's quite thin in here. This is where it's buckled when the heat's gone into the panel. So what I'm going to now do is to get the area that's got the strongest metal, which is just a bit beyond this, and cut a section out around here. Now, rather than continue to work trying to straighten this, which it is, it's coming up slowly, I'm only going to buckle it again when I put something in here. So I've decided now to cut this section out, or a section out of here, which will be between the two repairs I've already done. That way I'm hoping to minimise any distortion and correct obviously the thin metal issue there. So I'll stop doing any more on this. As I say, it's quite close to the shape. So little lows here where I've marked that with the texter, but I can get most of those out. But as I say, I'll cut this out now and put another repair section in. I've just fitted the repair section. That's this one here. It's got a nice tight fit. So now what I've got to do is go through and tack that in with the TIG, and once I've done that, then I'll weld that piece in. So it's fitting good enough to weld. Just looking at the areas that I've patched, patch there, large patch there, patch there. They're not actually joining. There are bits of solid metal in between, which is surprising. Would have been very difficult to do a whole section because it eventually goes right up to here. Luckily there are sections where there is solid metal in between, so hopefully that will keep the panel intact. Anyway, I need to now just tack that in and then start the welding. It's a bit hard to see, but the patch is tacked in place. There's really little distortion at all. Now what I'm going to do is to actually weld that. As I've said, I'm going to weld it in sections. I'm not proficient enough to go all the way around. Hopefully I won't get any distortion, but we'll see how we go. But it's looking good so far. Now this welded in okay, but I got a little bit more distortion than I'd hoped for. What's happened is the panel is actually dipped down. So between there and there it's got a dip. I've got to bring that back up. What's causing the problem here is that once again it's the flange on the back. It's giving all sorts of weird distortions when you get heat in the panel. And what I've started to do is to put some thin cuts in the flange so I can actually manipulate the panel more, because when it's dipped down it's very hard then to get the panel back up, because it's affecting the flange itself. So I just need to spend more time. So the weld went in okay, that's no problem. I've just now got to lift this back up to get the right profile. So that's going to take time. And unfortunately at the moment I'm busy elsewhere. Unfortunately not restoring cars, but getting other things done around the yard. I'll actually post a video on some of the work I'm doing there. But be that as it may, it will just take a little bit of time to get this panel back up. Bit of hammer and dolly work. I'm confident I can get it back, so not too worried about that. I've been doing a little bit of shrinking work on here, that's why this is discoloured. What happened was that in trying to get this panel straighter, I've actually stretched the panel a bit too much when I've been trying to solve the problem, so I've then had to shrink it, and it's gradually coming back up again. Anyway, it'll take time. I intend to actually get all of this area. These are the two welds. It's quite a large section now between there and there. I intend to get all of these finished properly before I finish the patches on the bottom edge of the hatch. So I'll be spending time to actually get these profiles back to where they should be.